Not believe that this just happened to be a coincidence.
There is no way this was a coincidence. This was widely publicized that the governor and many of our other elected officials were having a press conference here to talk about redistricting, and they decided they were going to come and thumb their nose in front of the governor's face. Why would you do that? That is unbelievably disrespectful. It's a provocative act. They're talking about disorder in Los Angeles.
All right, guys. Well, huge breaking news, because sweeping immigration raids can now return officially to the city of Los Angeles. This comes after Karen Bass lost and the Trump administration won today in the United States Supreme Court. And this is also coming on the same exact week where Trump is launching what he's calling Operation Midway Blitz. This is a mass ICE enforcement campaign in the sanctuary cities of this country. And now that Los Angeles is, legally speaking, back on the radar, you can fully expect it's going to be a very interesting next couple of months, as we're going to see Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass losing their minds, and they no longer have a performative little legal victory to cling on to. I pointed out, as we talked about this before, that the court ruling, the court victory that Karen Bass got, that basically stated that ICE raids cannot be conducted solely on factors of race, ethnicity, or the language you're speaking or whatever, was never even an accurate a summary of what ICE raids were actually doing, right? They were targeted. They're going after probable suspicion. They're not just randomly rounding up Latinos, but that seemed to be what the lower courts here thought. The Supreme Court is basically saying, no, that's not what's happening. And even furthermore, the federal government, I know, big newsflash here, but it was written in the decision, does actually have the authority to enforce existing immigration law. Isn't that so interesting? Because we've been told by so long from liberals who know nothing about even immigration law. They seem to think that immigration court is the same as criminal court, right? You have to be convicted of a crime by a jury of your peers to be deported. No, that's not the case. But no, indeed, the Trump administration is using a legal basis for what is going on here. There is a so-called due process. There are constitutional rights, etc., etc. The problem is liberals don't understand that, newsflash, you actually do have the ability to enforce immigration law in this country, and those laws indeed do exist. So we'll tell you all about this, again, major victory here today, as well as show you apparently what is now going on in these sanctuary cities. And I'm telling you right now, Los Angeles is going to be next on the list here very soon, maybe within even the next few hours. So we'll get into it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We're almost at 500K. Help us get there. Hit that red button. And with that said, we'll take a listen here to those details of the 6-3 decision, as again, the Supreme Court has sided with allowing Trump to basically have whatever type of ICE raids he wants in the city of Los Angeles.
This story, a huge deal out here in LA. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court now clearing the way for roaming immigration sweeps here in LA to resume once again, at least for now. That coming after lower courts first blocked the administration from carrying out these raids back in July, saying they were discriminatory.
Obviously, this is a big change. Senior national correspondent William Lajeunesse is topping off this hour with this breaking news for us out of LA. What do we know, William?
Well, Sandra, it's an important ruling in that a district judge and an appeals court had effectively stopped immigration enforcement in Southern California. And we expected it to effectively become a nationwide ban, as other judges in other cities would cite this ruling to stop ICE actions in their jurisdictions. So it was a Biden-appointed judge in July issued a restraining order stopping ICE from stopping individuals with just reasonable suspicion that they're in the U.S. illegally. It barred officials from relying on certain factors like race or being outside a Home Depot looking for day labor. Well, the Ninth Circuit upheld that ruling, prompting the administration to go to the Supreme Court, arguing that the ruling restricted ICE's ability to enforce the law passed by Congress that says you can't cross the border illegally to live and work in the U.S. We're talking 10 to 20 million people. Stopping even routine operations like hitting employers with reasonable cause to believe that they employed large numbers of illegal workers. So Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote in his concurring opinion that race or ethnicity alone cannot be a reason to stop someone, but it can be considered along with other factors informing reasonable suspicion to stop someone for illegal immigration checks, such as where people gather and what jobs they are working in.
Right. Well, that's the important distinction to make here, because contrary to liberal narratives, this was never an issue if ICE was just running around indiscriminately rounding up people who look Latino. However, what was happening, and the court was trying to restrict from happening, is the issue of probable cause and reasonable suspicion, right? For instance, you have a workplace where either there's a known complaint or there's a tip or something where there's a bunch of illegal aliens working there. By the way, it's usually well known in the community. Hey, that place hires a lot of them, right? And they go in there and they act on that reasonable suspicion and they figure out who's illegal and they detain and ultimately deport those people. So that had nothing to do with, oh, you look Latino, you were speaking Spanish. No. But again, when there's a widespread belief, there's reason to believe that, right? For instance, you go to the Home Depot parking lot, as a Border Patrol official will later note here, a bunch of these people run away, right? So that's probable cause of what? Obviously, heck, even if it had nothing to do with immigration, police officer shows up and everything is fine. Maybe they're just getting a donut or something. And then some guy sees the police and just starts running. Well, you don't think the police are going to detain that person as well? So there's a lot of factors that go into this here, but apparently that was being restricted. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. That said, I want to show you what the Supreme Court and the majority opinion wrote on this, because it is quite telling. So, because again, they keep saying Trump is violating the law, all this garbage. Well, here you go. Justice Kavanaugh, concurring the grant for the application of stay here, says the following. The Immigration and Nationality Act authorizes immigration officers to interrogate any alien or person believed to be an alien as to his right to be or to remain in the United States. Let's say that again. Immigration officers have the ability to interrogate any alien or person they believe to be an alien. That's why I again say the laws exist. They are on the books. Just because liberals refuse to read them or don't want them to be enforced does not change the legal basis for which they, of course, can be enforced. This is according to 66-233, 8 U.S. Code 1357A1. For any of you who want to research that, it really does exist. Okay. Immigration officers may briefly detain an individual for questioning if they have a, quote, reasonable suspicion based on specific articulable facts that the person being questioned is an alien illegally in the United States. In other words, you can indeed ask someone based on a probable cause, hey, are you a citizen? Can we verify that? If the answer is yes, you can be on your way. If you're illegally in the country, then indeed they can detain you. Not all that different for how probable cause works with regular law enforcement and those issues, but again, this is a big deal because now ICE can actually ask, ICE can basically do things, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, Los Angeles now is fully back on the radar. And heck, after all, I would even argue here that going around LA in general, knowing how many illegal aliens there are, maybe you could make a lot of arguments for probable cause. But anyways, again, big deal here. But I also want to show you the liberal dissent because it really does line out, as we've seen before, by the way, from the other one, what's her name? Ketanji Brown Jackson, how ridiculous liberal justices are and their legal philosophy. Right? Because we've long made the case, as we've pointed out whenever it came to all these temporary injunctions and all this garbage against the Trump administration, that the left-wing political and legal philosophy in America is not that judges should enforce the law as it exists and as it's written and just make sure the law is being followed, the Constitution's being followed. They believe that you should inject your social commentary into it. And essentially, if there are laws that the judges don't like, they're just basically going to say that the laws are hurtful and they don't agree with them, therefore it's thrown out, right? Totally a out of bounds approach to what the legal system should be. But here's another example of that, right? Because we've shown you before in a lot of these immigration rulings, like, oh, it's causing undue emotional harm and it's unjustly cruel, right? I think it was Jackson that wrote something like that. And it was like, you're a judge. The point of view is not to have commentary on whether or not the law is cruel or the action is cruel. Does it follow the law? Does it follow the Constitution? That's the only job that a justice has, right? You're not the president. You're not the legislature. And these are the same people, by the way, currently screaming at us about checks and balances, and yet they are fully supporting the idea that judges should make the law in this country, which objectively they do not. So anyways, here is Sotomayor dissenting, saying, quote, "This court decides to take the once extraordinary step of staying the district court's order. The decision is yet another grave misuse of our emergency docket," going on here to say, "We should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low-wage job. Rather than stand idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost, I dissent." So notice what you don't really hear a lot of in this. A sincere and broken down argument on how the Trump administration actually violated the law or violated the Constitution. It's just literally, quite literally, a statement of emotion, a statement of feelings, right? We shouldn't have to live in the country where the government can do this. But again, I say, that's an emotional argument. You're supposed to be a judge. Imagine this too, right? And imagine how scary that is if you ever have to face trial for something you didn't do, and the judge is basically like, I feel like you did it. I feel like you shouldn't be in the streets. Because that's exactly what this, we shouldn't have to live in this country, really? Your feelings are hurt? That's your case for dissenting? Utterly ridiculous. But again, this kind of backs up a lot of the legal arguments you've heard these woke judges using against the Trump administration so far. It is nothing based on law. It is like, I feel like that's bad, so I'm putting a temporary injunction on it. Of course, there's a judicial insurrection happening in our country. Anyways, that said, the National Border Patrol Council president is now responding to this victory, saying that already we've been enforcing the immigration law as it is on the books, which is what the Supreme Court here upheld. They're enforcing current immigration law, and Karen Bass and other Democrats need to stop demonizing our agents. But furthermore, he also points out here, right, how the probable cause aspect of this was never going, as I said, the way Democrats were describing. So take a listen.
They're enforcing immigration law as it is on the books. You know, these are targeted enforcement actions. You know, we use a number of factors to determine where we're going to go and who we're going to go after. And many of these people, they run as soon as our agents and officers get there. So that as well is an articulable fact that can be used for reasonable suspicion. And we can go after them, we can chase them down, and then our investigation begins to determine whether this person's legally or illegally in the country, and then we take them into custody based on, you know, the answers that they give. So, you know, Karen Bass and those other Democrats that are demonizing our agents, they need to stop, because it makes it a lot more dangerous for our agents to do the job that they were trained and swore to do.
Yeah, well, needless to say, Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles not taking this so well. Here's her response to the utter destruction of her arguments in the Supreme Court here, saying that I want the entire nation to hear me when I say this isn't just an attack on the people of LA. This is an attack on every person in every city in this country. Well, hold on a minute. Attack on who? We're not illegal aliens. We're citizens of the country. Now, I know in your city, when you say the people of LA, you're referring to like almost half probably illegal aliens. I understand all that. But Karen, just so you're aware, in most other places in the country, illegal aliens are not that much of the population. Okay, just so you understand. But it's an attack on us, apparently. Oh no, we're going to get deported to countries where we don't even have a passport to, right? I'm sure. Anyways, today's ruling is not only dangerous, it's un-American and threatens the fabric of personal freedom in the United States. So translation, they're enforcing the law. This is really bad. It's the right for my constituents, my support group, the illegal aliens to stay in my city. And what will our economy do without it? Because we need illegal aliens to run the biggest GDP in the entire country and the best economy. California is so great, right? Oh yeah, she's not happy. She's not happy. And she has good reason to not be happy, because this, of course, comes on the same week where the Trump administration is launching, as you can see, Operation Midway Blitz in cities like Chicago, surging federal law enforcement into the city. This ICE operation will target the criminal illegal aliens who flocked to Chicago and Illinois because they knew Governor J.B. Pritzker and his sanctuary policies would protect them and allow them to roam free on American streets. DHS said so, again, ramping up of those operations. And Chicago is not alone. ICE raids are now happening across Massachusetts, specifically the Boston area, where federal agents have flooded the city, arresting scores of criminal illegal aliens. So as you can see, Los Angeles, just for your information, now that the Supreme Court has sided with us, in the words of the legendary Goldberg, you indeed are next. Okay, so check it out.
Breaking news tonight. The Trump administration has started an operation in Massachusetts to arrest and deport undocumented immigrants. That's according to a report from the New York Times. This comes as the Trump administration says it will crack down on sanctuary cities. The New York Times reports Boston is being targeted because of its policies to limit cooperation with federal immigration authorities. Now, in response to the reports, Mayor Wu released a statement saying, "Today, Boston is the safest major city in the country because we have worked to build trust in the community. We will not be bullied or intimidated into abandoning the efforts that make Boston a safe home for everyone."
Yeah, well, newsflash, guys, we are not going anywhere. So, with that said, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.